87, the nays are 232. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 3, printed in Part B of House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, upon which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-296, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and remain standing. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. This is a 2-minute vote.
Another amendment vote on a bill that would require federal agencies to take additional steps before issuing new rules, including considering the cost and impact of the regulation. The White House says that if the bill passed Congress, senior administration advisors would recommend a veto. This is a 2-minute vote. Sheila Jackson Lee's amendment would provide federal agencies the discretion to provide advance notice of a proposed rule 90 days before it takes effect. Committees are also meeting on Capitol Hill today, including the Senate Agriculture Committee, and the Associated Press reports that they have voted to subpoena former Senator John Corzine to testify next week about his role leading MF Global, a brokerage firm that collapsed this fall after a disastrous bet on European debt. The committee chairman, Frank Lucas of Oklahoma, said his testimony is, quote, essential to fulfill our objectives. Representative Lucas said the subpoena was necessary because Mr. Corzine hadn't answered an informal request to testify at the December 8th hearing. That's this morning from the Associated Press. House Republican Conference met this morning. Earlier we showed you the briefing with Republican leaders, and you can find that in our video library at cspan.org. And the Hill reports on that meeting that House GOP leaders plan to attach legislation to speed up a federal decision on the Keystone XL oil sands pipeline to a broader package that extends unemployment insurance and payroll tax cuts, according to a Republican lawmaker. Ben Gieman in the Hill writing that Representative Lee Terry, the sponsor of the Keystone Pipeline measure, told reporters that Speaker Boehner announced the strategy at a House GOP conference meeting this morning. Quote, the Speaker announced that the bill will be part of the unemployment and tax holiday package, Representative Terry said at a press conference this morning on the pipeline bill.
The yeas are 162. The nays are 250. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 5, printed in Part B of House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, upon which further proceedings were postponed and upon which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise and remain standing. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The bill under consideration today would require federal agencies to consider the cost and impact of new regulations. 2-minute vote here on an amendment proposed by Gerald Connolly of Virginia, basically exempting areas of food safety, workplace safety, air quality, consumer product safety, or water requirements, water quality from the requirements of the bill. 2 more amendment votes will follow this one. The Senate's not in session today, but Thursday they passed the defense authorization bill. The vote was 93-7. Still, differences with the House version of the bill over treatment of terrorist detainees will have to be worked out in conference. The Senate returns on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
This vote, the yeas are 171, the nays are 242. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 6, printed in Part B of House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler, upon which further proceedings were postponed and upon which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Nadler of New York.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in favor of recorded vote will rise and remain standing. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Democrat Jerrold Nadler has an amendment to the Republican bill curbing federal regulations. His amendment would exempt regulations from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission under the Atomic Energy Act. 1 more 2-minute vote, 1 more amendment vote will follow this. It was possible that the House was going to take up a bill dealing with stopping a potential freight railroad strike, but yesterday the freight rail industry settled their labor disputes with 2 out of the 3 labor unions, railway unions, and gave the 3rd an agreement to extend talks. So the House will looks like it'll wrap up its business, at least its voting legislative business, before noon Eastern today.
On this vote, the yeas are 174, the nays are 247. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 7, printed in Part B of the House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, upon which further proceedings were postponed and upon which the nays prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in Part B of House Report number 112-296, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in favor of a recorded vote will rise and remain standing. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
It's the last amendment vote. Sheila Jackson Lee with an amendment which would exempt the Homeland Security Department from the bill's requirements, a bill that would require federal agencies to take additional steps before issuing new federal regulations, including considering the cost and the impact of the new rules. This is a 2-minute vote. We expect a Democratic motion to recommit and final passage ahead.
On this vote, the yeas are 174 and the nays are 247. On the motion,
Mr. Thompson of California.
I don't think that you or I want to put those together.
Mr. Thompson of California votes aye.
on this vote, the yeas are 175, the nays are 247. The amendment is not adopted. The question is on the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises.
Chairman. Reports of the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 3010 and pursuant to House Resolution 477 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the committee of the whole under the rule. The previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on the amendment to the amendment reported for the committee of the whole? If not, the question is on adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, third reading.
A bill to reform the process by which federal agencies analyze and formulate new regulations and guidance documents.
For purposes, the gentleman from Iowa seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to commit at the desk.
The House will be in order. Shh. Gentleman from Iowa.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am opposed to the current form.
Gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Boswell of Iowa moves to recommit the bill H.R. 3010 to the Committee on the Judiciary with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Add at the end of the bill the following section, guaranteeing the lowest prescription drug prices for seniors. This Act and the amendments made by this Act shall not apply to new regulations or the revision of existing regulations that reduce cost or increase coverage for pharmaceuticals and other health services for seniors, or efforts by the Secretaries of Health and Human Services, Veterans Administration, and Defense to negotiate lower prescription drug prices.
Gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My motion to recommit will provide both parties with the opportunity to come together to save hundreds of millions of dollars, rein in federal spending, and support American seniors, American troops, and America's veterans. Let me be clear. Listen up. This
Speaker, the House is not in order.
Could the House please come to order? Gentleman from Iowa may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be clear. The passage of this amendment will not prevent the passage of the underlying bill. If adopted, my amendment will be incorporated into the bill. The bill will be immediately voted upon. The amendment is direct and incredibly important. Simply put, it will prevent the underlying bill from creating regulatory hurdles for low-cost drugs. Day in and day out, we talk about spending in this country, and particularly in this Congress. Well, my amendment gives the Chamber the chance to rein in one of the greatest culprits in our out-of-control spending, health care. Today, health care spending is more than 17% of our nation's GDP, a number so massive that a 5-point reduction would save Americans $870 billion. Medicare Part D covers 29.5 million Medicare beneficiaries. So how do we pay for prescription drugs? 83% of Medicare Part D funds come from our nation's general revenue, and CBO has estimated that America's Medicare Part D spending will total approximately $53 billion in 2012. That's quite an incentive to pay for drugs wisely and efficiently. This amendment helps us to do that. First, it protects current and future regulations that lower the cost of pharmaceuticals from being hindered by the underlying bill. We have done too much to support American seniors and improve health care today to let regulations increase costs on our citizens or jeopardize their access to care. Nationwide, we have provided greater access to health services to Medicare beneficiaries and reduced the costs by allowing access to discounted drugs in Medicare Part D. We sent checks.
Will the gentleman suspend? Could we please have order in the House so the gentleman from Iowa may be heard? Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please listen up. This is very important to all of us. We send checks to seniors this year. We sent checks this year who hit the Part D donut hole, and we made a commitment to close it by 2020. We must continue to aid our seniors and reduce the cost of their medicine, but we must also reduce the cost to our nation. The second part of the amendment ensures that this bill will not prevent the Secretary of Defense, Veterans Affairs, or Health and Human Services from negotiating for lower drug prices. Military health care covers the needs of more than 9 million individuals ranging from active duty, their families, and veterans. Fortunately, the Secretaries of the Department of Defense and the VA have the authority to negotiate with companies on the price of drugs. We must protect their ability to serve the millions of military members, active duty and retired, and their families who have served our nation. Not only will this amendment defend the right of these agencies to ensure the best prices for our veterans and military families, it will protect any future provision that would provide the Secretary of Health and Human Services the same power to serve the nearly 30 million Medicare Part D beneficiaries and make medicine more affordable. Our constituents know what a driving force health care costs are in our nation's spending crisis. They feel it every day in their homes and do all they can to get by. My own constituent in Des Moines, Jan, recently wrote to me to say that she is, quote, concerned about the prices of medicine in our country, as it's often the biggest part of most citizens' out-of-pocket health care costs, end of quote. Echoing her concern in a small town, Donna wrote, quote, countless Americans can't afford to buy medication in the U.S. and yet cannot afford to go without them. These constituents and many more told me that if we could pass legislation to lower the cost of medicine, that it, quote, it would be extremely popular with your constituents and it would be easy to garner bipartisan support, end of quote. I agree with my constituents. We should do this. I hope that you will support this, bring it back, and let's pass it, and let's be sure that we do the best we can to help our seniors, our military, the military families, and our veterans. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Arkansas, seek recognition.
Yes, I rise in opposition to the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I yield myself such time as I may consume. 11 months ago, on the floor of this House, the President of the United States promised the American people to, quote, reduce barriers to growth and investment. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order. When we find rules that put an unnecessary burden on businesses, we will fix them. Those are the words of the President of the United States in this body. I couldn't agree more. That very month, the President issued an executive order that said, quote, our regulatory system must promote economic growth, innovation, competitiveness, and job creation, end quote. I couldn't agree with the President more. The President said our regulatory system, quote, must identify and use the best, most innovative, and least burdensome tools for achieving regulatory ends, end quote, and that it must take into account benefits and cost. I couldn't agree with the President more. He was right. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. Could the House please be in order? Thank you. The gentleman's recognized.
The President's words were correct. He was right when he spoke here. When our regulatory system doesn't meet the standard, the President's supposed standard, it kills jobs, suppresses economic growth, and locks us even further into stagnation. We see the evidence all around us. I recently hosted a jobs conference in Little Rock, in my district, at the President Clinton Library, which brought together a diverse group of over 60 private sector job creators. They were there to discuss how federal policies affect their ability to succeed in the marketplace. The job creators that I heard from in Little Rock that day overwhelmingly agreed. They were of one voice. It was almost unanimous. The Obama administration's overregulation of the private sector injects uncertainty into the market, which stifles job creation. One of my constituents, Susan Gunnica, a constituent of mine who owns a number of International House of Pancake restaurants, said this, quote, "As a business owner today, I am in a constant posture of defense," end quote. Let me be more specific. Some of the job conference participants work for companies that provide low-cost electricity to Arkansas families and businesses. But even their mission is under siege by the Obama administration's EPA, which is intent on forcing some power plants offline. The compressed timeline for many recently issued regulations requires too much in too short a time frame for these electricity providers to comply. Sandra Bird of the Arkansas Electric Cooperatives put it this way, quote, "As a for instance, the two most prominent rules, Utility MAC and the Clean Air Visibility Rule, could actually cause us to have to shut down our coal plants if they're not extended," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentlemen, House will be in order.
If plants get shut down, electricity costs will go up and more jobs will be lost. We will not sit idly by and watch as this administration kills jobs in Arkansas or in any other state in this great country. The President hasn't been to Arkansas in a long, long time, but I would be happy to show him the impact of overregulation firsthand. Republicans in Congress took the President's words to heart. His words on regulatory reform, we said, hey, you're right, Mr. President. We're going to do something about it. We saw the evidence of overly burdensome regulations all around us. So what did we do? We got to work. We wrote a bill, the Regulatory Accountability Act, to reform a regulatory system so that it does exactly what the President said it should do. We built the bill on the very terms of President Obama's executive order. It calls on agencies to consider the benefits and the costs before they regulate. It calls on agencies to use the best reasonably available science. It calls on agencies to use the best, most innovative, and least burdensome tools for achieving regulatory ends. And it does so while assuring that agencies will achieve every single statutory objective Congress sets before them.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
This political motion to recommit is an attempt to assure this block.
The time of the gentleman from Arkansas has expired. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Recorded vote, Mr. Secretary.
Gentleman from Iowa requests a recorded vote. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of passage.
The House today has been working on a bill curbing federal regulations. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill before final passage. The motion made by Leonard Boswell of Iowa would ensure that the administration can continue to issue new regulations or revise existing ones on reducing the costs or increasing coverage for pharmaceutical and other health services for seniors, and will also allow the secretaries of H.H.S., of the Veterans Administration, and Department of Defense to continue efforts to lower prescription prices. This is a 15-minute vote. It'll be followed by a 5-minute final passage vote. Elsewhere today in Washington, the Labor Department announcing that the unemployment rate dropped from 9% to 8.6% in November. That's the lowest since March of 2009, with Labor saying that employers added 120,000 jobs last month. At an event in Washington this morning, President Obama commented on the labor statistics. He was unveiling, along with President Clinton, a $4 billion public-private partnership to improve energy efficiency in federal government buildings. We'll show you as much of this as we can during this 15-minute vote.
I never got to open for the Rolling Stones, so I'll try to do my best for the President. Thank you all for being here, and I want to thank all the people involved in the tour that we just received for their commitment to energy efficiency and all the people they put to work. Mr. President, I want to thank you and Secretary Chu and Gene Sperling and your whole team. Tom Donahue and Randy Weingarten, thank you for joining together today for what you are doing. When the President asked me to work with his Jobs Council on improving energy efficiency in buildings, I think he did it because the Clinton Global Initiative and my own climate change project have been working on these kinds of things for several years now, and I believe as strongly as I can say that this is good business, creates jobs, makes us more energy independent, and helps to fight climate change. It's the nearest thing we've got to a free lunch in a tough economy, because all of the savings can be paid back within a reasonable amount of time, all the cost of the construction, through lower utility bills. So we've been working on that, and the President has an announcement to make about that today. I just want to say how grateful I am to Rich Trumka and the AFL-CIO and to Randy Weingarten for the work that the labor has done in putting up some of the pension funds from California and some other funds they have to actually invest their own money, gambling that they can get a reasonable return and putting people to work. And I appreciate the support that Tom has given to this, because there are a lot of construction firms that are going to lose really skilled, gifted workers if they can't find something to do, because there are not a big demand for new buildings today, and therefore the best opportunity to preserve and rebuild this sector is through greater energy efficiency. I want to thank all the people who have been involved in this. And, Mr. President, I just want to say how grateful I am for the meeting we just attended. The President's Jobs Council and Economic Team put together a meeting that we were just, the President had, there were nearly 50 people there. And he'll tell you what they said they would do. But I hate to sound like a broken record. We could create an almost unlimited number of jobs out of this, even in this lousy economy, even with all this embedded mortgage crisis, if we can work out the financing. And I am grateful to be able to support this, to offer the continued effort of our climate change project and the Clinton Global Initiative to help the partners we have that are involved in this and anybody else that wants it. But I'm especially grateful that the President didn't let this fall through the cracks. You know that I haven't been in that job for a long time, and I'm getting older, but I have some memory left. And 1,000 people ask you to do 1,000 things. And one of the tests of whether things work out or not, since you can't do all 1,000, is whether you can actually set up a process to do things and follow up. And I am full of gratitude and praise, Mr. President, for you and your whole team, and not just for your commitment to green energy, but for your commitment to energy efficiency, which gives you, on buildings like this, averages 7,000 jobs for every $1 billion invested. By far the greatest bang for the buck of any available investment I know. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ricky and Randy. And Mr. President, thanks for giving me a chance to work on this. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I want to first of all thank Randy and Tom for their participation, and I am thrilled that President Clinton has been willing to take this on. As he pointed out, partly thanks to me, he's home alone too often, and this has been a passion for him for quite some time. So I am very grateful for his involvement. I thank everybody at Transwestern and all the folks who are participating here for giving us this remarkable tour. There are the equivalent of 250 full-time workers as a consequence of the project that's taking place here. It is a win for the business owners. It is a win for the tenants of this building. It is a win for the construction workers who are participating and for the property manager that's doing such a great job. So this is a great example of what's possible. You know, as president, my most pressing challenge is doing everything I can every single day to get this economy growing faster and create more jobs. This morning, we learned that our economy added another 140,000 private sector jobs in November. The unemployment rate went down. And despite some strong headwinds this year, the American economy has now created in the private sector jobs for the past 21 months in a row. That's nearly 3 million new jobs in all, and more than 500,000 over the last 4 months. So we need to keep that growth going. Right now, that means Congress needs to extend the payroll tax cut for working Americans for another year. Congress needs to renew unemployment insurance for Americans who are still out there pounding the pavement looking for work. Failure to take either of these steps would be a significant blow to our economy. It would take money out of the pocket of Americans who are most likely to spend it, and it would harm small businesses that depend on the spending. It would be a bad idea. I think it's worth noting, by the way, I noticed that some folks on the other side have been quoting President Clinton about it's a bad idea to raise taxes during tough economic times. That's precisely why I've sought to extend the payroll tax this year and next year. It doesn't mean that we lock in tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. I don't think President Clinton's been on board for that for perpetuity, but just thought that might be worth mentioning. That's why it's so disappointing last night, by the way, that Senate Republicans voted to block that payroll tax cut. That effectively would raise taxes on nearly 160 million hardworking Americans because they didn't want to ask a few 100,000 of the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share and get the economy growing faster than everybody. And I think that's unacceptable. We're going to keep pushing Congress to make this happen. Now's not the time to slam the brakes on the recovery. Right now, it's time to step on the gas. We need to get this done, and I expect that it's going to get done before Congress leaves. Otherwise, Congress may not be leaving, and we can all spend Christmas here together. Now, our longer-term challenge is rebuilding an economy where hard work is valued and responsibility is rewarded, and the middle class and folks who are trying to get into the middle class regain some security. An economy that's built to compete with the rest of the world, and an economy that's built to last. And that's why we are here today, in a place where clearly there is some building going on. President Clinton, leaders of business, leaders of labor, we're all here to announce some new steps that are going to create good jobs rebuilding America. This building is in the middle of a retrofitting project to make it more energy efficient. Already, this retrofit is saving this building $200,000 a year on its energy bills. And as I mentioned earlier, by the time it's finished, it will have created more than 250 full-time jobs on construction here in this building. Consider, President Clinton's coming down from New York. The fact that the owners of the Empire State Building did the same thing. They are retrofitting that iconic landmark from top to bottom. It's a big investment, but it will pay for itself by saving them $4.4 million a year in energy costs. And it's estimated that all the retrofitting that they're doing will pay for itself in about 4.5 years. Making our buildings more energy efficient is one of the fastest, easiest, and cheapest ways for us to create jobs, save money, and cut down on harmful pollution. It is a trifecta, which is why you've got labor and business behind it. It could save our businesses up to $40 billion a year on their energy bills. money better spent growing and hiring new workers. It would boost manufacturing of energy-efficient materials. And when millions of construction workers have found themselves out of work since the housing bubble burst, it will put them back to work doing the work that America needs done. So this is an idea whose time has come. And that's why in February I announced the Better Buildings Initiative. It's an ambitious plan to improve the energy efficiency of America's commercial buildings 20% by the year 2020. And I asked President Clinton and my Jobs Council to challenge the private sector as part of the initiative to step up, make these cost-saving investments, and prove that it works so that other companies follow their lead. Now, I believe that if you're willing to put people to work making your buildings more efficient, America should provide you some incentives to do so. That's something that would require congressional action, and we have asked Congress to work with us to move on providing more effective incentives for commercial building owners all across the country to move forward on these energy efficient steps. But we can't wait for Congress to act, and if they won't act, I will, which is why today I'm directing all federal agencies to make at least $2 billion worth of energy efficiency upgrades over the next 2 years. None of these upgrades will require taxpayer money to get them going. We're going to use performance-based contracts that use savings on energy and utility bills to pay the contractors that do the work. And it should keep construction workers pretty busy. In fact, this is something that the Chamber of Commerce has said is critical to private sector job creation. The private sector and community leaders are also stepping up to the plate alongside the federal government. President Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative have been tremendous partners in rallying them to join this effort. So in June at CGI America, we announced initial commitments of $500 million to upgrade 300 million square feet of building space. Some of these projects are already underway. The good news is today we can announce that we're going even bigger. We've received larger commitments. We now have 60 major companies, universities, labor unions, hospitals, cities, and states, and they are stepping up with nearly $2 billion in financing to upgrade an additional 1.6 billion square feet of commercial and industrial space by our target year of 2020. That's more than 500 Empire State Buildings. I just had a chance, along with President Clinton, to meet with representatives of these 60 institutions that are involved and hear firsthand how they can put Americans back to work but also improve their bottom lines. So you've got companies like Best Buy and Walgreens that are going to upgrade store lighting, which is going to save them money. You've got manufacturers like Alcoa that are going to make their manufacturing plants more efficient, dramatically reducing their operating costs, which means they can compete more effectively all around the world. You've got property management companies that are upgrading their buildings to make their real estate portfolios more attractive to businesses, and one is already upgrading 40,000 units of military housing all across the country, which will give our military families lower utility bills and a higher quality of life, and all of this will create jobs. So over the past decade, we've seen what happens if we don't make investments like these. We've seen what happens when we don't come together for a common purpose. Wages flatline, incomes fall, employment stalls, and we lose our competitive edge. But we've also seen what happens when we do what's right. When Bill Clinton was president, we didn't shortchange investment.
Vote.
We didn't.
The yeas are 186, the nays are 233. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
The record,
Gentleman,
Mr. Speaker,
gentleman from Michigan.
I ask for a record vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those who are favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And just to let you know, that briefing with President Obama and former President Bill Clinton, you'll find that on our website in the video library at cspan.org. We'll also show it to you later in our program schedule. This is the vote on final passage on a bill that would require federal agencies to consider the cost and impact of regulations before issuing new federal rules. The House was set to take up a bill aimed at stopping a railroad strike, but yesterday the freight rail industry settled labor disputes with two of its unions and agreed to extend talks with a third, so they won't be taking up that bill today. So this is the last recorded vote of the day and of the week in the House.
On this vote, the yeas are 253, the nays are 167. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
It's okay.
For what reason does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize the passing of former Congressman Carlos Moorhead.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members, Carlos Moorhead represented the cities of Pasadena, Burbank, and Glendale for 24 years, from 1972 until 1996. Prior to coming to Congress, he served for 6 years in the California State Assembly, and before that as an attorney in private practice in the city of Glendale. Carlos was a gentleman in every sense of the word, kind, thoughtful, and absolutely dedicated to serving his constituents. When I was first running for office early in my career and met Carlos, he was always gracious, even fatherly, taking me aside to give me advice and counsel, though we were in different parties. He was at all times hardworking and ethical. I never remember Carlos saying an ill word about anyone. He was able to disagree about policy without making it personal, and he provided a great example for another generation that has gotten away from that kind of civility. Carlos served the communities in his district ably and effectively throughout his years in Congress. He served as ranking member on both the Judiciary and Energy and Commerce committees during his tenure. He was particularly known for his expertise on energy policy and intellectual property. Carlos is survived by his wife, Valerie, 3 children, 6 grandchildren, a sister, 3 nieces and nephews. I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence in memory of Congressman Carlos Moorhead. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what reason does the gentleman from Maryland rise?